Well, hello, boys and girls. Today, I want to talk about a magical law, a scary magic law that gives the president all kinds of special powers that until now, nobody ever knew he had. I'm talking about the Insurrection Act. Now, before I get into this, let me make clear from the outset. The Insurrection Act is a horrible law. It is an absolutely terrible law, and it is very poorly drafted. It gives the president all kinds of power that he should not rightly have. So I'm going to make light of this a little bit, but don't misunderstand. This is a terrible law that Donald Trump wants to use, and I'm sure will use in a way that is greatly harmful to this republic. So the fact that I'm having a little bit of fun with this, don't take that to mean that I don't think this is a bad law or a serious threat or something that we shouldn't be concerned about. It absolutely is. However, so much of the commentary that I see out there about the Insurrection Act is completely disconnected from reality. People toss around that phrase, the Insurrection Act, and people believe anything that is said about it. It's a law. As bad as it is just a law that it was passed by Congress. Okay? That's all it is. It's not some special horrible part of the Constitution. It's a law. And like any other law, it cannot violate the Constitution. So to the extent that it does, it's unconstitutional. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds on the Insurrection Act. As I said, it's a very horribly drafted law. I've talked about it many times before, and unfortunately, I'm sure I'm going to have to talk about it many more times in the future because I do believe that Donald Trump will invoke it. But let's be honest with ourselves about what it is. Now, the reason I'm talking about this today is because I was on Twitter this morning and I posted something about the elections. There's an article in the New York Times about these election deniers that Donald Trump has put into these important elections positions inside the federal government. And I'm going to do a separate video about that. It's bad. But I posted a comment about how the federal government has no legal authority over elections. The federal government does not control elections, does not conduct elections. Every election in this country, even for president of the United States, is conducted by states and localities. Anyway, I will talk more about that later. But in response to my posting about how states control elections, I had somebody write to me the following. He said, "Romano, dude, what a pathetic, naive moron you are. Trump will invoke the Insurrection Act and suspend the 26 elections and the 28 elections also." Now, that is what prompted me to make this video, because I hear that a lot. Trump is going to invoke the Insurrection Act and cancel the elections. That's not a thing. Instead of believing every ridiculous thing you hear about the Insurrection Act, which is bad enough insofar as what it does say, we don't have to read into it things that it doesn't say. It's bad enough. And one of the things it definitely does not say is that it gives the president any power to delay or postpone or cancel elections. All right. What the Insurrection Act does is it gives the president the authority to use the military for two reasons. To put down an insurrection on American soil. If there's a rebellion against the federal government, he can use the military to put that down. Or to use the military to do domestic law enforcement. If federal officials, federal law enforcement, are insufficient to deal with some crime or if they're insufficient to enforce federal law, then the president can use the military essentially as backup to federal law enforcement. If federal law enforcement ain't getting the job done, he can use the military to enforce federal law. That's it. And that's bad enough. It is an exception to the Posse Comitatus Act, which prohibits the use of the military for domestic law enforcement. The Insurrection Act is an exception to that. It says, for these certain specific reasons, it is an exception to the Posse Comitatus Act, and the president can use the military on American soil to put down a rebellion or for domestic law enforcement. That's all it says. And again, it's bad, especially since it is worded, it's drafted so vaguely, and it gives the president so much power to determine whether the military is necessary in those circumstances. It's even arguable whether the courts have any ability to review his decision at all. It's a horrible, horrible law. But it doesn't say anything about canceling elections, nothing about elections. It's simply about using the military to put down a rebellion or for law enforcement. That's it. Now, why are people not afraid that Trump is going to use the Insurrection Act to seize the home of every registered Democrat? I mean, why not? Or why doesn't the president invoke the Affordable Care Act to cancel the 26 and 28 elections? Why not? I mean, the Affordable Care Act gives him just as much authority to cancel elections as the Insurrection Act does, which is to say, it gives him no authority to cancel elections. There is no federal law giving the president authority to cancel elections. And here's what's also important to understand. And so the point I was making about, why aren't we worried that he's going to invoke the Insurrection Act to take Democrats' homes or to confiscate all their property or to throw them in concentration camps? I mean, if we're going to say that the Insurrection Act, if we're going to worry that he's going to use the Insurrection Act to do things that the Insurrection Act does not say he can do, then why are we stopping at canceling elections? Why aren't we worried about him using it to round up Democrats or steal their property or whatever else you want to think of? The point is, the Insurrection Act doesn't say any of that. Yet we're worried about him invoking it to cancel elections, but we're not worried about him invoking it to do all these other things. Now, what's important to understand about a president's authority to do anything really is that it derives from only two sources, either the Constitution itself or from laws passed by Congress. Okay, so if the Constitution or laws passed by Congress do not empower the president to do something, then he has no authority whatsoever to do it, and it's illegal and unconstitutional. Yeah, and I know we're talking about Donald Trump right now, who doesn't obey the laws and doesn't obey the Constitution, but let's just understand this because it's important. So the president's powers are in the Constitution are set out in Article 2. And really, it doesn't say too much. It doesn't give him too much direct authority. Most of his authority comes from laws passed by Congress. Now, in the Constitution, the president has no authority whatsoever to cancel elections. Okay, so there's no inherent constitutional authority for Trump to cancel elections. So if he has any such authority, it would have to have come from Congress. Congress would have had to pass a law authorizing the president to cancel or suspend elections. Now, I will tell you right off the bat, there is no such law. Congress never passed any such law giving the president any authority to postpone or suspend elections for any reason. Now, could the Congress even pass such a law? The answer to that is no, because Congress can't pass laws on whatever they want to do whatever they want. Congress, just like the president, Congress only has authority to do what the Constitution gives Congress the authority to do. And Congress's authority is laid out in Article 1 of the Constitution. And nowhere in Article 1 or anywhere else in the Constitution does it give Congress any authority to pass a law to suspend or cancel elections or to give the president the power to do that. Okay, so it's important to understand there is no such law that allows the president to postpone elections, to cancel them, and any such law would be unconstitutional anyway, because Congress has no authority to pass such a law. So let's just understand, if Trump were to try to postpone the elections, it's simply flatly illegal. Now, that doesn't mean he won't try to do that. The man's a criminal. The man sees himself as a dictator. He wants to be dictator for life. He violates our laws and our Constitution on a daily basis. So just because it's not legal for him to do this doesn't mean he won't try. And that goes back to my original point about that I was making in that comment I posted on Twitter when I was talking about how it's the states that control the elections. It's important to understand that. Now, I've said this many times. Trump cannot postpone or cancel elections without the states going along with it. He's got no authority to do it. And if he wanted to force the states to cancel elections, how would he do that? With an executive order? Guess what? That executive order would be flatly unconstitutional, and no state is bound to follow it. But then you have the question of, well, will some of these red states go along with it because they're controlled by Trump cultists? Well, maybe. And we'll talk more about that in greater detail later. But the point is, the states would have to go along with it because the states control the voting process, the voting places, the voting equipment. Every election official administering any election anywhere in this country is a state or local official. There are no federal elections officials. They're all controlled by the states. So even if Trump tried to order the states to cancel elections, the states would have to willingly go along with this unconstitutional postponement or cancellation of elections. And by the way, not only would the states have to go along with it, but they would be violating the law and the Constitution too, because the states don't have authority to delay or postpone federal elections. Now, they may have the authority to delay, or did I say delay or postpone? Delay or cancel federal elections. Let me try that again. They have no authority to delay or cancel federal elections. They may have authority to delay or cancel state or local elections, but that's determined by state and local law, okay? That's a completely different subject, but they have no authority whatsoever to delay or cancel federal elections. So one, they'd have to go along with Trump's illegal executive order, and they'd have to violate the laws and the Constitution themselves in going along with Donald Trump's illegal executive order. So this is just illegal act upon illegal act upon illegal act in order to delay or cancel federal elections. Does that mean Trump won't try it? Does that mean some red states won't go along with it? Again, no, it doesn't necessarily mean that, but we'll talk about that at another time. What I think is a very realistic worry that we should have, because I think it's important, we shouldn't worry about things that aren't possible. There's enough that is possible that we do need to worry about. So my whole point is about the Insurrection Act. If Donald Trump is going to try to cancel future elections, he's not going to be able to do so legally through the Insurrection Act. So his invoking it doesn't matter. He may very well try to do these things, but the Insurrection Act doesn't give him authority to do it. He may try, but he's going to try just because he's a criminal thug dictator. And so he doesn't even need to invoke the Insurrection Act. He's just going to do some of this stuff. And he might invoke the Insurrection Act to try to justify it, but there's not a single word in the Insurrection Act that would justify it. So it's stupid. He may do these things, but it's not because of the Insurrection Act. So what might he actually try to do? Because I think it's very realistic for us to be worrying about him fucking around, trying to cancel, trying to postpone, or at the very minimum, try to interfere and rig the elections. All of that, I think, is a legit concern. I'm just saying, don't believe the bullshit about the Insurrection Act giving him the power to do any of that. It just doesn't. Or him just declaring some emergency, or him starting some illegal war, whether it's legal or not. If we're in war, that doesn't give him any authority to cancel elections or even to postpone elections. All right? If he's going to try to do any of that, there's no legal basis whatsoever that gives him the power to do it. It's completely illegal. So let's not worry about the Insurrection Act's going to let him do all this stuff. No, he may do it, but it's just because he's a lawless dictator. That's why he may do it. So am I most concerned about him trying to do? Well, I think he is going to invoke the Insurrection Act, and I think he will invoke the Insurrection Act to try to mess with the elections. Absolutely. And I think that's the most likely way he's going to do that is to get the military on the streets in blue areas of the country and to put them all around polling places to scare people away from voting. Absolutely, I think he's going to do that. And even if he doesn't use the military to do it, even if for some reason he decides not to invoke the Insurrection Act, he's got plenty of these ICE thugs. At the bare minimum, he's going to put ICE all around these polling places. That's absolutely a concern. What else might he do? Well, if it looks like Democrats are winning the election, Donald Trump may very well order the military, if he's invoked the Insurrection Act and we have the military on the streets, he may order the military to seize voting machines. Now, again, the Insurrection Act does not give him authority to do that. It would not be legal, but he might do that. Absolutely, he might do that. He wanted to do it in 2020 when he lost that election. We know that from the January 6th committee and their findings and the testimony of Department of Justice officials who were openly talking. Donald Trump was openly being advised by people like, I think, Sidney Powell, those kinds of lunatics, to order the military to go into the states and seize the voting machines and to declare the vote rigged. So absolutely, he may use the military to suppress the vote or to seize voting machines, or, there's probably lots of other things they're talking about doing. My point in this video is that the Insurrection Act does not give him power to do that. Okay? He may do that, but that's just because he is a criminal who doesn't follow our laws and Constitution. My point is, do not think that the Insurrection Act is this magical act that gives the president all kinds of power, and all he has to do is invoke it, and then he can order the elections canceled, or, declare himself dictator for life, or anything. It doesn't give him any of that authority. That doesn't mean it's not a horrible, horrible law. It is. It pisses me off that it's on the books, that Congress has never repealed it. It's a horrible law, and Trump I'll be shocked if he doesn't invoke it, and he's going to invoke it, and he's going to do great damage to this country in doing so. So please don't take anything I said as minimizing the threat that Donald Trump poses, or how horrible the Insurrection Act is. It is terrible. But what it is not is some magic law that gives the president lawful authority to do all these things. That's what I want to make clear. Donald Trump may try to cancel elections somehow, or to postpone them somehow, or to interfere with them somehow. But anything he would do would be illegal. We have no law and no provision of our Constitution that makes any of that legal. As bad as the Insurrection Act is, it does not make any of that legal. So yes, we need to be worried about him invoking it, but not to do that. He may try to do those things, as I said, but that's just because he's a fucking criminal, not because the Insurrection Act allows him to do that. I hope you guys, that makes sense, and that you understand the distinction I'm trying to make here. By the way, my friend here who called me a moron, and again, here's what he said. Romano, dude, what a pathetic, naive moron you are. Trump will invoke the Insurrection Act and suspend the 26 elections and the 28 elections also. I responded to him by saying, you have obviously never read the Insurrection Act. Invoking it gives him no such power. Perhaps look in the mirror while using the word moron. Finally, and I got to give this guy credit, he admitted when he was wrong. And he said, Romano, let me go ahead and read the thing. Yeah, you are indeed correct. My bad. However, Trump may proceed with it in an effort to create total chaos and then attempt to subvert the election results like he did in 2020. To which I replied, he will probably use the Insurrection Act to put military on the streets around polling places to scare people away from voting. He may even order the military to seize voting machines if Republicans lose. There is no telling what that criminal may do, but we shouldn't believe everything insane that gets said on social media about the Insurrection Act. And then my friend replied, Romano, I'm going to follow you if that's okay. What's your opinion on the birthright issue? So it looks like I made a friend. I won him over. And I'll get back to him later, maybe, about the birthright citizenship issue. And since I'm reading his reply here, one more thing I want to make clear. In fact-checking me, my new friend, he screenshotted a question that he posed about the Insurrection Act to ChatGPT. And ChatGPT told him that I was right. But I do want to caution you about ChatGPT. Because actually, when I first saw that he was screenshotting ChatGPT, I was like, oh, great. Now he's going to have some wrong information from ChatGPT, and he's going to tell me how I'm an idiot and don't know what I'm talking about. Here's the thing about ChatGPT and all these AI models. There was an article literally that I read yesterday that said ChatGPT and these other AI things, when it comes to news and political information, they get it wrong like 50% of the time. Because when you ask ChatGPT a question, it scours the internet for all this information, it synthesizes it or whatever the hell it does, and it spits you out an answer. The problem is, these AI models, they can't tell the difference between what is true and accurate information or what is just some bullshit, some whack job posted on a blog somewhere. So just because ChatGPT tells you something, especially if it has to do with politics, where so much of it is so much of what is on the internet is opinion and misinformation and outright lies, don't assume that the answer you're getting is correct. In this case, it turned out that it was correct, but 50% of the time, that's not the case. So just be careful with these AI tools. They're not always right. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope it all made sense. I thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.